In the terms of Black culture and photography, I think of reenactment as a way to try to recreate the essence of a moment or experience. So in photography, when looking through the viewfinder, you don't always capture exactly what you see. So with editing software like Adobe Lightroom or Photoshop, I'm able to tweak little things like lighting and contrast to kind of reenact or recreate the feeling or intention I had behind taking the original photo. In my photography, I like to capture moments as they are, not editing anything too crazy or wild, but really trying to preserve a scene in time as if it were in ice. The first two photos I took are one of my favorites. I like to think that the art speaks for itself without needing too much info behind, and the viewer can extract their own interpretation. But for me, if I were to think of reenactment or the pursuit of preservation, I would think of these photos.
I guess what comes to my mind is historical reenactment. Oh, sorry. Let me continue from that point. What I think about what I consider think about reenactment is probably historical reenactment. Basically reaching back in history and pulling that moment, kind of like a snapshot, and expressing in the present. I guess in that regard, it does allow one to reflect on that moment in history from a more modern perspective, as well as kind of just see like the how things have changed maybe from that point in time. Honestly, just seeing it, or like just thinking about like historical reenactments of like major events in history are always really interesting, because sometimes, it's always interesting when the person or people who are doing it are really passionate about what they're doing, because they try to get as close as possible to like historical context, as well as like little gestures that they used to do back then that have either just lost meaning now or evolved into something else entirely in the present. So, yeah, I guess as a summary, historical reenactment is just looking back on the past with a new perspective and then expressing that perspective. The photos I chose were from a Cuba research tour with the Black Cultural Center, and from those pictures, I took pictures of various performances of Cuban performers acting as orishas in Cuban performers acting as orishas, and that is something that we pulled from for the coffee house or the CAF performance at the Black Cultural Center, because I am in Jahari. So that year, or after the research tour that spring, we were inspired to make a dance that was based on the orishas that we saw in Cuba. So I felt like those pictures, as well as my experience, I guess, acting as an orisha for our performance, was almost kind of like a pseudo form of reenactment. Well, I mean, like, we're making history like every day. learn something from it, or just like reflect back on like what you did maybe a few hours ago, because we're always moving forward, so history is always being made. And in a sense, like, the pictures that I chose, we were kind of in a way trying to capture what I guess if you're seeing the pictures overlaid, we were trying to capture what we saw in Cuba and then perform it for an audience at Purdue. So, yeah. I guess that was kind of our form of reenactment, and that's why I chose those photos in particular. I felt like that was probably the most prominent form of reenactment I could show through my photography, as most of my photos, well, I'm looking at some of my photos now. One of them is just kind of for research. But yeah, I felt those photos really expressed that sentiment of looking back and trying to try to derive meaning from something that was very meaningful to you.